Okay, everyone, this is my spoiler review of X-Men the Animated Series, Season 4, Episode 15, Lotus and the Steel. This originally came out February 3rd, 1996. So this is heavily focused on Wolverine this episode, and it actually opens with a therapy session he is having with Professor X. You get to see all this trauma Wolverine's been through in his life, which is a lot, and you'll see more of that later in the episode. He's just having nightmares of some of the struggles he's had in his past, but what's really a strength of this episode is it's dealing with a fear he has that he is something that he really isn't, and that is being an animal. He is not Sabretooth, he is Wolverine, he's a hero, but he has a feeling like this incident that happened that day where he attacked a kid who cut him off in traffic and almost hurt Jubilee made him fear about himself. So you learn he still has a lot of work to do, because when he came to the X-Men, as Professor X mentioned, they had harnessed his rage, but he still has rage there, and it's scaring him. It's scaring him that he is, at the end of the day, this beast. But he clearly isn't, and they do a good job of showing that in this episode. I also like that they wrap it around that Jubilee feels guilt about everything that went down, and that's why she goes after Wolverine and wouldn't want to live with not trying to help him, because she knows he's clearly upset and lonely. She looked through his files, obviously, but at the end of the episode, he says, "It's not your fault. This is something I had to do," which I thought was really good that they acknowledged that at the end of the episode as well, and had a nice little payoff. So Wolverine will go to Japan, where he was happy before, and scares Professor X because he says he's leaving the X-Men. You get that shocked animated look like every time in the show, which is great that Professor X does. But you see, he sees Nightcrawler in the reflection, and he's remembering what Nightcrawler said to him when he first met him: open your heart, see through different eyes. This will be a theme through the episode. It connects to what Master Oku says to him, where he says something very similar, where he says, try looking at yourself through new eyes. So it's not even just looking through new eyes at other things, but looking at yourself through it, which is him really learning how to actually accept himself and love himself and not look at him as this evil animal. And I love they visually show him thinking that way by showing him looking at the reflection in the water at one point in his nightmare and seeing Sabretooth. I love him being called Logan-san through the whole episode. It reminds me a lot of Karate Kid, this episode. And I like the symbolism they did with the building of the temple, a little at a time, no hurry. So it's also Wolverine learning to just a little at a time work on himself and his soul. Now, of course, he has to have someone he falls in love with here, and he meets Kiyosara and her brother Soishi. But you're seeing a different Wolverine. He's trying to control his urge to protect at the beginning, which he thinks is what he should be doing, but he's actually doing the wrong thing here. He actually is someone, like they'll show, his purpose is really to protect and care for people. That happens here when Yoshida is getting yelled at by his son, and Wolverine steps in to tell him to respect his elders. Now, when Wolverine's cutting a tree down at one point, this is where he's greeted by Silver Samurai, which I think is an awesome villain. I just think he looks so cool visually. And I love the line where he's like, "The name's Logan and I'm cutting trees." What a great introduction to somebody. And I like that they set up he was holding back here with Silver Samurai, but later on we'll still get to see the showdown there, because that's him being his normal self that we know and love. Now, this biker gang will show up to this village wanting the tribute owed to them in 3 days, and it reminded me a lot of Negan with his bikers, and someone who's out there having a village work for them and then doing terrible things to make them obey. Like, Silver Samurai shows up and he makes it 2 days double payment, and then he burns one of the temples down, which is insane. And Master Aku is in it, and I love he was just meditating still in the temple while it was happening when Wolverine saves him. And Wolverine just looks at this guy so frustrated, like it never ends. And I think so many people can relate, especially when they're trying to have a moment of peace or a retreat, that like still you're getting hit with things in life that just make it so hard to just be calm and just relax for once. But the best line of the episode is actually in Wolverine's dreams, when he's thinking of what Kiyosara says to him, that Master Aku would say, inner peace is not found by avoiding conflict, but in serving your true nature. And that's when Wolverine looks at his adamantium claws, and again going to him realizing that it's a good thing, that that's his way of protecting and caring for people. Because as he says in this moment, his true nature, he doesn't know what that is, but he starts to learn that as the episode goes on. And then the Wolverine we know and love comes back here when he agrees with Soishi about fighting back against Silver Samurai's people and sticking up for themselves. And he's like, "But you're right, either you stand and fight or you'll be kissing their backsides forever." That's when you know he's back. And you see the village revolts finally. They set traps for these bikers, and Wolverine saves Oku here, but Oku's like, we all fight in our own way. It seems you have rediscovered yours, because you see how Oku is just someone who talks in that situation to talk people down, but you also need Wolverine types as well to protect and fight. And we get our big showdown with Silver Samurai and Wolverine, but the change in Wolverine, which is great too, is he's controlling himself a little more, his head in these fights, and he's like, use your head for a change, and he notices that Silver Samurai likes to come from behind, so he does a backflip to get behind him and takes him down. And like I said, we get that nice closing moment with Jubilee, where he says, my leaving was never your fault, kid. It was just something I had to do. So it eases her guilt, too. And it was cool she showed up at the end, too, to help out. This isn't one of my all-time favorite episodes, but it's still a decent episode. It's a little slow, and it's not, like, the most memorable, but it does do a lot of necessary things with the character Wolverine to give him growth. He is the main character of the X-Men at the end of the day. So it was nice to touch base with him on that, and I really, really love how they compared it with Sabretooth and how he's not a Sabretooth and that he's not this vicious animal and the self-doubt he has and working through that, and that his way of protecting and caring for people is okay and is a good thing he does. So I really like that too. So there was some strong writing in there. I'm going to give this one an 8.2. Let me know what you thought of it down below. Please hit that sub button on YouTube. If you're on TikTok, come over to YouTube as well. I'm also on Spotify now and Apple Podcasts. And please follow me at Steve Varley Show for my other account as well. And I'll see you next time.